Preface. This exhortation is presented starting with an opening quote preface, followed by the exposition in the quote body, and closing with a brief quote postscript. In a globalized world, nothing changes unless and until everything else does. We need to be the world we want to become by unveiling the way moving forward. This Indie Green Alliance grafts ideas of primeval independent political culture onto the Green Party tree by renewing our quote 1789 founding document with the American Universal Constitution for short. Things aren't solved at the level that they occur, but at their underlying foundational causal. The anecdotal and systemic business as usual focus strengthens their duocracy and weakens our democracy. Only the constitutional and civilizational PaRaDiSe takeaway approach strengthens our democracy and rids duocracy of the fossil parties. This campaign shouldn't be perceived as politics as usual. It shouldn't be about issues, the favorite strategy of the reigning duocratic red and blue parties. There are countless anecdotes and thousands of issues, but only one foundational constitution and a single underlying civilization. Instead of delving with the piecemeal anecdotal and systemic, let's address wholesale the constitutional and the civilizational. We need to create a whole new board game with rules which favor democracy over duocracy. It's not about coming close with a 2% or 3%, but rather about winning all across the board to enact real, deep, long-term improvements by way of the American Universal Constitution. The Indie Green Alliance to win by unveiling the PaRaDiSe Age of Success for Salvation. Case. Your friend of dialogue, Ricardo Turullols-Bonilla, Rick Mr. T, is writing independent candidate running for the U.S. Senate, Texas for the upcoming election November the 3rd, 2020. The Green Party has no candidate for this position, nor for any statewide office for that matter, to give unity to its campaign. Rick is offering the Green Party to form the Independent Green Alliance, or Indie Green Alliance for short. The case for said alliance is presented in 1. Mathematics, 2. Strategy, and 3. Principles. 1. Mathematics. Doing the math, the state of Texas is transitioning and is no longer reliable Republican Party nor flipping to Democratic Party either. The distribution is three-way split between red, blue, and neither red nor Dem, rather as independent. With the green out, it won't take votes from the Democrats. With the Libertarian in, it diminishes the Republicans' incumbent advantage. The election distribution is 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 2. Strategy. The strategy of the independent, non-Republican, non-Democrat is defined as second story instead of neutral center. This requires a revealing platform the likes of which never has been seen before. Besides keeping the center independence, it needs to chip away from both traditional Republicans and progressive Democrats. The force of inertia favors the status quo. However, the pandemic opens it up since crisis is opportunity for change. The key for success in the campaign is salvation from crisis. Now we must come up with something that addresses the pileup of the crises of civilization, of the pandemic, of the economy, of racism, and the rest. The rest of this paper will be taken up by the argument of principles. The goal of this paper is to demonstrate the viability of the great Indie Green Alliance. The Greens platform is a specific case of the Indies general template. The Greens' numerous principles fit within the single principle of the author. The practical side is to introduce primeval civilization. I'll present a draft of the winning platform for the Indie Green Alliance. Firstly, mention a schematic of the Green Party's platform of 4 pillars and 10 key values, followed by our own usual triad parts PRD, one whole S as PaRaDiSe. Then do the mapping of the green onto the Indie as an application of PaRaDiSe. The platform of the Green Party consists of a call to action, a preamble, the 4 pillars, and the 10 key values. The 4 pillars are peace, ecology, social justice, and democracy. The 10 key values are grassroots democracy, social justice and equal opportunity, ecological wisdom, nonviolence, decentralization, community-based economics, feminism and gender equity, respect for diversity, personal and global responsibility, and future focus and sustainability. Number 3, principles. Let me present my principles as independent candidate. The platform of the independent takeaway position, hereby abbreviated as INDI, is PaRaDiSe of triad parts PRD, one whole list, further unfolding into auxiliary triad of triads, acronym representing triad parts becoming PRD, of physical P, mental R, and spiritual D, of being self S. The longer version of PaRaDiSe is one whole S, sought secret, with triad parts PRD as Deraj Discover, Remez Remit, and Peshat Plain. This friendly faith science I developed in my works, quote, PaRaDiSism, Human Science 101 in 2016, and, quote, The Principle of World Caring in 2018. Now, let me do a brief rundown of the ideology of the Green Party, starting with the 4 pillars, and then transfer our findings of the 4 pillars onto the PaRaDiSe takeaway. Under, quote, peace, it says, our country's long wars and worldwide military presence are immoral and unsustainable. Under, quote, ecology, it says, the human cost of climate change is too high. Under, quote, social justice, it says, we demand a living wage and a real safety net. Under, quote, democracy, it says, we demand public financing of elections, open debates, and more representative voting systems. Now, we'll map the Green's 4 pillars onto the main triad of INDI's PaRaDiSe takeaway. Firstly, properly identify each one under the assumption that it's top-down. Quote, peace. For the one whole S, sought secret, spot as heading. This goes inside the ellipse at the very top and outside the takeaway PaRaDiSe Genesis 1:1 A Aleph. Quote, ecology. In its most basic sense, it refers to our habitat in creation. We identify ecology with the Raj Discover, and it goes on the vertical imaginary axis of the right triangle of the spiritual. Quote, social justice is more physical or material, whereas democracy is more mental. We'll accommodate, quote, social justice and properly identify it with Peshat Plain. This goes on the horizontal real axis of the right triangle corresponding to the physical, quote, democracy. We identify it with Remez Remit. So, quote, democracy goes on the hypotenuse of the right triangle corresponding to the mental. The procedure is the same for the remaining 10 key values of the Green Party onto the INDI's visual representation. The next step is to unload all of our findings onto the schematic representation of the triads. Just like the Green has a secondary level of these 10 values, likewise, the PaRaDiSe takeaway has a triads unfoldment. Doing the math, the Green has 10, whereas the INDI has 9, as 3 times 3 from each triad. Basically, the takeaway says that the one whole unfolds onto a triad of bags into 3 categories of the spiritual, mental, and physical. First, we're going to eliminate, quote, democracy from grassroots democracy, leaving solely, quote, grassroots. Likewise, quote, social justice in social justice and equal opportunity, leaving solely, quote, equal opportunity. Eliminate ecological wisdom since it already appears on the spiritual axis. Simplify respect for diversity to diversity. I would recommend avoiding unnecessary redundancy. This means trimming down, quote, feminism and gender equity to, quote, gender equity, and, quote, personal and global responsibility to, quote, holistic responsibility, quote, future focus and sustainability to, quote, sustainability, and community-based economics to in common economics. The 10 key values would be expediently narrowed down to 9. These are roots, equal opportunity, nonviolence, decentralization, in common economics, gender equity, diversity, holistic responsibility, and sustainability. That said, the three SAGs vaguely correspond to the three categories of spiritual, mental, and physical, or more ordinarily, spirit, mind, and body. In the physical P, I stack, quote, equal opportunity, quote, in common economics, and quote, sustainability. In the mental R, collect, quote, grassroots, quote, diversity, and quote, decentralization. This leaves in the spiritual D with, quote, nonviolence, quote, gender equity, and holistic responsibility. The next step is to take each bunch and further classify it in a spectrum of spiritual to mental to physical. Starting with the physical P, I put, quote, in common economics as most physical, double P, as least physical sustainability or most spiritual, DP, within the physical sphere. This choice leaves, quote, equal opportunity as the most mental, RP. Now to the mental R. I would go for, quote, diversity as most physical, PR. As for the least physical, quote, grassroots, as most spiritual, DP. These choices leave, quote, decentralization as the most mental, RR, spiritual D. The most concrete of the spiritual is, quote, nonviolence as most physical, PD. The least physical, quote, holistic responsibility as the most spiritual, DD. Quote, gender equity as most mental, RD of the spiritual realm. The whole point of this exercise is to demonstrate the compatibility of the political platform of the Green Party and the worldview of the PaRaDiSe takeaway on the part of the independent candidate in question. The final step is to unload all of our findings onto the schematic representation of the ellipse, main triad, and triad of triads. At this point, you might be asking yourself, what does all this mean at the end of the day? That is, the fact that one can map a configuration onto a template of sorts. My take is that the configuration is an application of the more general principle of the template in lay terms. The Indies platform consists in proposing the American Universal Constitution, Ameriversal, as presented in my book, quote, PaRaDiSe, The Age of Unveiling for Success and Salvation, and videos at YouTube. The Green Party's approach of 4 pillars and 10 key values is equivalent to the author's PaRaDiSe takeaway as independent, as Indie. My case as Indie is presented before you for deliberation. All the Green Party's expectations for the people of this great United States of America are realized in the Indie's proposal of the American Universal Constitution, Ameriversal for short. Congratulations, Greens, on your well thought out platform. Also, we're furthering holism of faith science as powerful tool for culture plowing, what the wheel was for plowing nature by way of the triad PaRaDiSe takeaway in Genesis 1:1a Aleph. Well, that's all, people. Yours truly, Rick, your Anusi Charro, and GD Bless, Austin, Texas, capital of the world. Postscript. There are sages and there are dummies. I am not a sage, yet I unveiled the takeaway of the Torah Bible of PaRaDiSe in Genesis 1:1a Aleph. What keeps me up at night and unwinding during the day is how I may best serve my calling. The lead question is, quote, why is the world still broken even after the delivery of revelation to humanity at Mount Sinai of our creative green role in creation? The answer is, quote, it's still broken because the sages missed the takeaway and invented messianism in its place to cover up their blank oversight. As such, messianism is a negation of the completeness of revelation Torah Bible, a living denial of what was missed by the sages to begin with. By their punting the teachings of our role as humanity of caring for our world to the distant future, messianism opened the door to idolatry and the dominant thinking mode of dualism in our midst. Dualism has hammered the wedge of science-fit schism onto a broken world. Missing the unifying principle in creation, the broken world of dualism has resulted. The world is broken because we didn't know how to put harmony back together again, how to make it whole. Effects take after their causes, and all causes spring from the one cause at time equal to 0 of creation by the Creator. Only the takeaway PaRaDiSe in Genesis 1:1 Aleph is panacea for all the woes of humanity in the world.